We have a question in the back there.
Hi, good evening. My name is Kateryna Odarchenko, ICC Group at Institute for Democracy and Development. You know, this year, Institute for Democracy and Development is like our small think tank, but we did big research on how Russian disinformation work through issue of religious freedoms. And it became very interesting because they use like ratirs and different like organizations which sponsor it directly from Russian government in Eastern Europe, Central Asia, and in some European countries to make disinformation about other religions, like about evangelists, Baptists. So they, for example, publish articles that evangelists do some like parties, you know, and they post 200 articles about that. And of course, as it's like financed through cryptocurrencies or through cash payments, like European countries really can't like block it fully. So my question is, do you met the same like strategy from Russia or China in other regions where you have experience of? And second, my question, how practically like fight with that? Because technically on these people also must be sanctions because they directly take money for this disinformation and to oppress religious freedoms in other countries, but in fact, they not under sanctions. So how in practical we can fight with that, you know? Thank you.
Maybe I can say something about that. You know, I mean, I think the Russian case, you know, is an exemplification of a trend that we are seeing in many other regions, because where religious nationalism, so this combination between, you know, the majority religions and the political apparatus becomes very strong. I mean, I'm thinking here of Russia, you know, it's clear, but India is another case. I mean, that poses clearly a big challenge to minorities. Now, the issue you're mentioning is one of the recurrent criticisms that some of these countries have been doing, and it's about proselytism. You know, proselytism, so the fact that there will be a kind of you know, infiltration and manipulations, in particular linked to some often Christian groups attached to the interest of the West. I mean, that's the argument being made in Russia and in India, very similar. Now, what do you do about that? Sanctions? I've never seen, you know, yeah, the Commission recommends sanctions, but has ever the American really implemented any serious sanctions that have been effective?
Well, so, I mean, we recommend, for instance, we recommended India to be a country of particular concern. But the State Department, they have their own politics, right? They give the issue waivers.
But the point being that, you know, unfortunately, I don't see much of real effect by saying making them accountable. Yes, of course, there will be the United Nations system or the Organization for Security and Cooperation that can visit and this system. But for example, I mean, the Russian case, but in India, I think there is actually more work to be done of this sort of dialogue. Because, you know, we need to understand that the Hindu nationalists, they have a genuine claim against proselytism that is based on a series of arguments that I think we in the West, in particular, haven't taken seriously. So I think there needs to be a kind of more sophisticated dialogue involving important actors of the Hindu nationalist kind of structure, religious leader, public intellectual, political, because I think there is some advancement that can be made around these issues. So I think we need to try to think more creatively if we want to see real progress on the grounds, because ultimately, you know, the people who are suffering are the minorities, the people which are there. So, I mean, the Russian case at the moment with the war, I think it's very complicated. For example, I've seen a report of the Russians declaring the violation of religious freedom of Ukrainian Russian Orthodox. Of course, at the moment there is, you know, undoubtedly because they are seen as a Trojan horse of Russia within Ukraine. So the conflict is making the situation incredibly challenging. So
I would add very quickly, although this is a dark time, in the sense of, my point is to amplify voices, and we just had the Voice of America shut down. That's not the only voice. But one of the things we learned when we studied religion, speaking of Russia and the support of the Russian Orthodox Church for Putin's regime, is that orthodoxy is in itself contested. Other Orthodox churches and leaders are contesting Russia. And those voices are not as empowered as the Russian national voices. And if there are ways we can figure out how to amplify and empower voices within religious communities themselves, in this case, transnational Christian Eastern Orthodoxy, that's one strategy for making it clear that the propaganda is channeled from a certain source, but doesn't speak for the tradition, doesn't speak for the religion. And that's one important thing that we have to fight for, amplifying voices that demonstrate the diversity of positions and debate the authenticity of those that are spreading false information.
And can I just only, and some of these voices, which I think are incredibly powerful, are interreligious voices. And there are many, and they are growing. And the fact that some community, Muslim community, are advocating in favor of religious freedom of the pastors, this is an incredible new revolution. And we need to find ways, also through new partnership, to support and amplify these incredibly important seeds of hope that we see. It's new, unprecedented, and we need to find ways of doing it.
Thank you, Fabio, for giving me an fantastic opportunity to close with the positive note. Pope Francis, we pray for his health, visited Central African Republic. This is my classic example where Katherine and Fabio, they heard about this before. Because as you know, in 2013 and 14, there was a civil war in Central African Republic. And the conflict was not religious, but religious was exploited. Pope Francis decided to visit. The international community and the United Nations and the big power told him, don't go. It is dangerous. You'll be killed. He said, no, I want to go and visit. He decided to go and visit. Now, another dimension to this, what made it possible for a ceasefire between Antibalaka and Selika is an insider mediator woman was able to attain ceasefire so that the Pope can visit. Again, the role of woman here. When he was on the ground, everybody told him, do not go to PK5, where the majority of Muslims are. Very dangerous place. He said, no, I am going. He went there and met with what? Met with the chief imam, Ahmed al-Tijani. And then from that place, he said, faith over fear. Religious freedom brings prosperity. Religious freedom brings prosperity. Now, when you go to Car, Pope Francis is quite popular in the Muslim communities because of his courage. He visited the minority suffering and said, faith over fear. You have your religious freedom to practice. He empowered the community. That's where we see the interreligious collaboration is quite important. Thank you.
And on that note, that we're up at time, so please thank our esteemed panelists.
You have to close it.
Thank you all. Thank you for this wonderful panel. I really enjoyed the conversation. This